Hello, hello. We are in a bit of a more, I don't even know what to say, beach, before we get into our notes again on the new moon here. I didn't even feel like talking today, really, even though I did sit upstairs for a little bit talking with my housemate after we got back with the dog. And that was nice. I always enjoy talking with her, even when I don't want to be out and around other people, or even if I'm in pain. We heard her back a week ago, which happens every now and then or whatever. We've been pumping ibuprofen, just really a little irritable, not wanting to really do much of anything or see anyone. Even so, still when I see her, I'm just just light up a little bit. Yeah, because we have a good relationship and I really appreciate her. We're two peas in a pod in some ways. Yes, there's the kind of understanding, and it's nice when you have people like that they get you, and it's a lot more comfortable and easy. So but other than that, then I was quite relaxed today. We're doing all of our other stuff that we do on this day, and just not really wanting to talk, but here we are. Because the new moon is this evening, and I wanted to make sure that I got this up before then, if at all possible. So we're gonna do that here, but I'm just our energy, it's not that it's necessarily low, we're very calm, very relaxed, more so than usual. And even though there's a little bit of that putting on of the mask, or the putting on of the character, right? As soon as the camera comes on, you're trying to be a little more energetic, over the top or whatever. We're just it's a little, that's a little forced, because we've really just been kind of today, just okay. Yes, and we got our tea again. We went for mint today. Oh god, yeah, keeping us warm. I'm what else is going on? Yeah, today's the first day that I didn't take ibuprofen. I've been pumping it into our system since last weekend, to get through the week and working. So I decided last night before bed I wasn't going to take it, and then again today I was we're just going to cut it off now. And when I was on the walk with the dog, we still took a fairly long walk. I think it was about 25 minutes or so, but when we got a certain amount down the road, I was really feeling it in my back, and I was why? Part of me was hoping going on the walk would help it, but it just didn't. Yeah, and then we were stretching it out when we were talking to our housemate then, but I just am so we're back in our little spot here doing our other stuff while that does that. Okay, so I had the write-up done, but then I just finished this afternoon filling out the question and reflection segment at the end. So we just recently finished that up, and again, didn't necessarily look over the rest of it. So we're just gonna kind of go off of, what we read and see what comes up as we go. Yes, so here we go. My arm's already getting tired from holding this too. Let me see. How can we... I don't know. It's a little... I'm trying to lean on the arm of the couch here. Okay. Kind of. Sort of. It's gonna have to do. Okay. Sagittarius. New moon Sag this evening. Yeah, in the last new moon of the year, just like we had the last full moon 2 weeks ago. So we're kind of taking this weekend... along with the winter solstice, right? Wrapping up all these energies together and combining them, contributing towards, the intentions that we're setting for not only the upcoming month, the, next portion of the moon cycle, but also the entire year ahead, which we're really excited about for so many different reasons. I believe it's the fire horse is the symbolism for 2026. It'll also be a 10 or a 1 year in numerology, so 2025 has been a 9, wrapping up of a lot of major cycles for many people across the globe. And so, and Sagittarius, is representative of a horse or an archer, a centaur, and is a fire sign. So to end out the year, this new moon, with that, and going forward into the fire horse year and a brand new cycle in a lot of different ways for many people. It's just like really exciting. There's a lot of like fire and passion, excitement, thrill, as chaotic as the world has been, and different events that have been going on and the ways that they've been affecting people. There's a lot that we have to look forward to. And again, oftentimes there's so much going on behind the scenes that we don't see, both positive and negative, but for me personally, I'm really excited for this year coming up. And a lot of the work that we've done in our personal life has been not only for our own healing and growth as an individual, but also on a collective level. Like the things that we have done in our own life has been to hopefully be able to connect with, more people again in the near future here, and continue building into the vision that we had and have been pouring ourselves into for so long. So that's a little bit of that. 6 minutes in, let's go. Let's get into it. All right, Sagittarius is a mutable fire sign ruled by Jupiter. Love Jupiter. Occupying the 9th house, representing our philosophy, purpose, meaning, higher learning, education, university, college, exploration, personal, spiritual, travel, cultural, and guidance, mentors, teachers, guides, gurus, symbolic figures. As the sun is in the late degrees of Sagittarius, this weekend's winter solstice welcomes us into Capricorn season. Mars was the first to enter a few days ago, leading the way for the moon's brief stay before Venus joins us in the next week, and Mercury tailing behind at the start of the new year. This is a great time for taking a closer look at the karma or karmic lessons associated with these energies and how they are at play in both our personal lives as well as the collective conscious. Karma associated with the 9th house would have us look at the ways we connect to our personal beliefs, how they shape our moral and ethical understanding of ourselves and the world around us, and how we are able to connect more deeply with those around us to help facilitate our growth and expansion. The Dharma Bhava connects us not only to duty and righteousness, but it is our divine alignment to our karmic inheritance or past life blessings associated with fulfilling our purpose or the conscious cultivation of our destiny. Yeah, there's a little bit of a touch in this, right, of a deeper study that we were looking into this week in relation to this, and for us personally, right? But it's like, as we go on, we want to incorporate more and more of these things. But just as like a simple, like, let's get us out the door and get us rolling with this. We're like, we have our little outline, that we're going to be doing. But there's so much more information that can go into all of this, with like going into depth with like the different archetypes and the different belief systems behind them. Different symbols, and I'm really excited to just continue down that road and talk about all these things. Yes. So let's go. Light and shadow aspects of Sagittarius. Inspired by the Gemini one, we went a little bit more with this one again. We came up with a lot more words to describe. We were having fun with it. So light attributes: adventurous, optimistic, positive, jovial, bright, focused, bold, confident, inspirational, sensational, visionary, flexible, fun-loving, zesty, fearless, generous, entertaining, lucky, blessed, philosophical, and metaphysical. It's a lot. Okay, and then shadow aspects: self-righteous, grandiose, preachy, fear of commitment or overcommitted, directionless, restless, blunt, emotional detachment, avoidance, flighty, lusty, shallow, gaslighting, dramatic, distracted, stubborn, excessive, overconsumption. And again, when I like work with these like different energies in my own life, and I'm contemplating these things as I'm studying and then writing it out to share, right? I'm always kind of reflecting back on it for myself. Not only my own like placements in my natal chart, but also just like where I'm at this current point in life, right? And there's quite a few of these, even in the shadow aspects, right? Like I can see certain areas where like I still need to like accept even and like integrate and like certain things, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a little bit me, or I've been told this before about myself, like yes. Flighty was the one that stood out. I remember when I think it was back in high school, I remember one of my emails that I had made, when you used to make like 5-10 different emails so that you could like have different accounts on things. One of them was Holly Too Flighty, actually. I think Holly, inspired by, was it Breakfast at Tiffany's, I think? Was it? I think that was what inspired it. And then, yeah, too flighty. Like, I, was considered a little like flitty and flaky by some people around me. So I was like, oh, but we turned that around as like a more positive thing. It depends, right? In the eye of the beholder, like how people view certain aspects of ourselves. But I like, to flit around a bit. I feel like we've come a long way, right? Like we've grounded ourselves in a lot of way. So we're not as on the go, on the run as we used to be, but we still got some of that in us. Yes. Okay. It's true. It is what it is. Yeah. Dramatic. And I can be a little dramatic too. You could say maybe restless, distracted. I've been distracted today. Yeah. It's all, it is what it is. Okay. Into the reflection. What do we have here actually? Oh, okay. Yeah. I had copy pasted, some of what I had written in the above section so that I could like reference it without having to like scroll back and forth. So let me just get rid of that. For a reflection, we split it up into 3 categories based off of the karmas again. So we've got philosophy, exploration. Hang on, little notification again. This time it's Mars. We get the little hourly, what do you call it? Like every hour is assigned to different planets, and so we get the little updates like every hour. So that was just Mars. All right. That's Time Nomad. Time Nomad is the app. Okay. Philosophy. Where do I currently derive my sense of meaning and or purpose in life? What philosophies have shaped my life thus far? Where or with whom did they originate? Is there anything about my current philosophy that I would like to alter or adapt in any way? Are there any other philosophies or areas of study that I am interested in learning more about? What philosophical goals could I set for myself, if any, in order to begin or deepen this journey into the knowledge, study of myself, pursuing and fulfilling my purpose? I actually have a section in my Evernote specifically dedicated to philosophy. Again, we have a million different interests. And when I was much younger, and I started this back in 2011, I think was when I created my account in here. I wasn't as organized then, so it was just like note after note about like jumping around different things. But then we have over time tried organizing it a bit better, and they've changed a lot too. They're pretty good about like updating pretty regularly. And so not only are we able to put individual notes into notebooks, but then they also have like stacks and like substacks you can put them in, and all kinds of customizable stuff now, which I absolutely love. The Virgo in me loves that. I'm like so much organization. And we even went through, I think last year, we took some time to separate things by years as well. So one of our stacks is just by year, and it's 2011 to 2025. And we're getting ready to make a 2026 one. So I find that cool too, because, I can go back and look where it all started. And a lot of the stuff back then that I used to write about was a lot more, how would you describe? It's just like a lot of sillier stuff, different ways that I was like getting to know myself, and just a lot of silly stuff. I have some old poetry in there, and different like journal reflections. It's just, it's really neat. Love that. Okay. So that's philosophy. Exploration. What does personal, spiritual, or cultural exploration look like specifically for me? In what ways does this correlate to or differ from those I've observed closely and or at a distance? Tea time. Hang on. All right. What methods of exploration, vehicles of travel, transport, and various routes or detours am I able to incorporate into my life? What places or locations inside of myself and the world am I interested in exploring more deeply? These ones, I would be really curious in the future to see what certain people's thoughts are on some things like this. And with travel being associated with Sagittarius, a lot of times people's mind will immediately go towards like physical travel, right? Like planes, trains, automobiles. And that certainly is a large part of this. However, right, I would say even before we travel somewhere and we take a flight or we get in a car. Before that, there's a lot that goes into it, right? There's a lot of planning. There's, like deciding on the trip, like where you're going to go and making sure you have enough gas, possibly making an itinerary. Like there's a lot of things that when it actually comes time to get up and go, we don't always necessarily think too much or twice about anymore because we already, took care of that or someone did it for us. And so a lot of times when I'm writing these, I'm thinking of, again, ways we can think outside of the box, as well as think of things beyond the third dimension, physical realm, material realm, and into more of like our internal world and realm. What does it look like to travel or explore in our mind, right? And we've talked a little bit about the dream state before. Some people refer to this as like astral travel. It doesn't really matter what we call it, but, from my own experience, we've traveled up and down the East Coast a fair bit. But other than that, again, since I was a kid, before I was able to do some of that stuff, I was very, very inward focused, so like I had a very vivid, vibrant inner world that I created. And again, my dreams, I've been able to go so many different places and experience so many things like in my own mind. And it's just, I think that has been really cool. Even more so sometimes than like actually physically traveling, my mom joked with me about how when I was in her stomach, how she was traveling back and forth between Florida and Minnesota and Wisconsin, before I was born, because my dad and dad's side of the family was up in Minnesota, and then my biological grandfather and his wife and family lived up in Wisconsin, and then my maternal side of the family was down in Florida. So whether it was by plane or train, she was going back and forth with me in her womb. And it was like even before we were born, right? Like our our north node, we were kicking in there. We were like, let's go, Mom. Yes, because for us, we have our north node and our descendant in Sagittarius, as well as 13 asteroids. And for us, it lies in our 7th house, which is typically associated with Libra, and our committed partnerships. So just a little, something. And then I would say as a child too, even though I've said before about how I've been I was sheltered a lot in a lot of ways when I was a kid, I was very influenced by the media, watching TV and listening to music and things like that, because I spent so much time indoors. I still had some very, how would I describe? I feel like I've been blessed throughout my life in a lot of different ways to experience certain things. And even when my grandmother did warm up to the idea of me going over to my friends' houses and stuff, she never wanted friends to come over to our house, but she eventually gave in and allowed me to go to their house, which really helped me in a lot of ways too when I was growing up. And I had really wonderful friends when I was younger whose families just kind of took me in and loved and nurtured me in a lot of ways and provided for me things that I just didn't have otherwise. And so again, I had some really neat experiences as a kid too of traveling with my friends and their families, whether that was local stuff that we would go and do different activities, or even out of state. And so again, just a little, more of that energy in our life. Yeah, but we've always kind of been on the go and we've had to work at resting more. It's that restless energy of always trying to go and do stuff and just forward movement. So we've worked towards grounding ourselves a lot more and resting and not being like overtaken by the energy. But we have a lot of fire through the Sagittarius in us. I think that's where most of our fire lies. Yeah, because we only have our Chiron and Leo. There might be a couple asteroids in there, but it's like just Chiron and Leo. And then our Aries is completely empty of any like major placements. So I just have some asteroids in there. So a lot of our fire comes from Sag. Yeah, that's our inner cunt. so that's that. And then let's go to the last section here, guidance. Who are the people or symbolic figures who have played a role in the shape of my belief systems? What have I learned from any particular figure, and how has their guidance influenced my life path? Who are some of the people or figures I would like to learn more about from? In what ways have I adopted their guidance and transformed my life? How am I able to guide others through my lived experience in a way that assists others in their own journey and transformation? I'm like, there's a lot we could say about this too. I also, right, like if I go throughout my life, I've always been surrounded by different people that I have consciously like recognized or like noticed things that I admired about them and like would look up to and even like emulate in some ways, right? There were certain teachers I had in school when I was a kid, even some of my neighbors who were very helpful. There was a woman that lived down my street in Florida who I called her like the plant lady because her front yard was just like so overgrown with all of these plants, and like she was just this gardener, you know, and just beautiful. Like I loved it. Some people might not like that, you know, because of the whole like American thing of like having these perfectly groomed lawns, but I loved the way that her house and yard looked. It just was like so abundant and like overflowing with life. And, you know, having all those plants also attracted a lot of like bugs and animals, and I was attracted to that. I was like, you know, and eventually too, I was allowed to go down there, and I don't even know like what it was at the time, if she was like tutoring me or what it was, but it's just like we found ways to get away with getting out of the house, you know. And so she was like one of those places for a little while where I would go and like be in the house with her, and she would like get me a little drink or a treat, and we would talk. And I'm like, I don't even know that I necessarily really needed her help. Maybe it was like a project, I don't even know, but I just liked her, you know, and liked being around her. So and then yeah, some of my teachers, I like know some of them specifically by name. I'm not gonna like say it in here, but yeah, like my one English teacher I had for a couple years in a row back when I was in the gifted classes, they called them. We had like the same teacher year after year, and she was very helpful to me at that time, almost like very like motherly of a figure. And I remember her, she either was pregnant or like had just given birth or whatever, I don't know, but I was like, I felt so attached to her. I was like, oh my God, I'm having a baby sister. Anyways, yeah, stuff like that. My one science teacher, he was really cool. He just was like very fun and chill and like down to earth, and he would like joke with us, and he was like kind of like a fatherly figure, you know, and just all these different things. Yeah. And then as far as like spiritual figures, because again, I wasn't raised in any sort of religion, you know, I started learning about Jesus Christ through the boarding school I went to. I did have like some of my friends growing up, they were from Christian families, so they were like somewhat associated with it, but if anything, it more so came from their parents, because we're all kids, you know, we're like not looking into that stuff yet. So, but there was like a tiny bit of influence of that, but like barely. And then yes, once I moved here as a teenager, I started learning about Jesus, got into Christianity, and started branching out from there. You know, I wanted to learn where the Bible came from. So we started reading the Tanakh and like learning about Judaism and Kabbalah. And then we just kept going from there. We got a Bhagavad Gita and a bunch of other, you know, texts that we started reading, mostly like on our Kindle, and then like, you know, stuff that we could find online for free. Yeah, but we just were like whole world opening to us. So yeah. And then different writers, authors of different books that I read. I always liked like quotes from different, you know, figures. an old agenda that I had would have like little quotes at the bottom of it, and I always like cut them out and keep them, save them for later. I remember some of them was like Mother Teresa. I was like, oh, who's she? Like, I want to know more about her, you know. Albert Einstein, another famous one, right? Ernest Hemingway. I'm just like, you know, it's like I'm thinking of like different things that influenced me when I was younger and growing up in those earlier years. And then since then too. Yeah, old pastors or like church religious figures that have been in our life. Other people online. I'm like, yeah, but we're kind of in the mindset where we have always been this kind of like student and still are in many ways. And we like to continue to learn from the people around us and continue to grow. And yeah, so that's that for guidance. Let's go back up here to our personal placements to see, 'cause we're already 25 minutes and I'm like, ooh, this actually went quite fast, more than I thought. But that's good, because like I said, I didn't even really want to talk. I'm like, we have other stuff on our mind today, but we gotta get this going, get this out of the way. You see my little, I'm like shining in the warm light over here. What is that? I think I have a chair pulled over there where I just throw my like coat and fleece and like outdoor like sweatpants if I'm going outside in the cold. And I just throw them over the chair there so they're like ready to go when I want to like run up the stairs. Yeah. So that's a little pile sitting there. My cozy little pile. Okay. Let us see. Yeah, the 9th house is typically associated with Sagittarius. And for us, that is where our Aquarius is. And we only have 2 asteroids in there, and then other than that, the closest thing to it is our Saturn, which is, you know, on the 0 degrees of Pisces, right next to it. But it's like we don't have a whole lot of Aquarian influence other than, you know, our asteroid then. One of them is Eros. And then for our Sagittarius, like I mentioned before, it's in our 7th house, Libra, committed partnerships, Venus ruled. Love that for us. And 13 asteroids on top of our North Node and our descendant. So a whole shit ton of fire. Yes. And let's see here. I'm just thinking about like what more we would want to talk about in regards to some of this stuff. Our North Node, I've mentioned a few times before now already about how we've been working with both the energies of our South and North Node, with our South Node being in Gemini across from our North Node in Sag. And at 12 and 21 degrees, a little mirroring going on. Perfect for December. Winter solstice. Okay, just little patterns. Let me see here. When I was learning more about the nodes, I've seen, you know, all kinds of stuff out there, and one of the things that I found important was in not necessarily like demonizing one or the other, right? Or like trying to avoid the energy or the karma associated with that placement, right? Because for a while, because I was so familiar, you know, my own past with my South Node in Gemini, I was more focused on my North Node as I was learning about it and deciding for myself, not only like in my own mind, but also as I was like writing and planning for the future. I was taking a lot of this into consideration, you know, like how do I incorporate more of my North Node into not only what I'm doing now, but into my long-term vision and plan. Whilst continuing to utilize and work with the energies of my South Node in Gemini, right? And a lot of that is like our collecting of information. Like I'm always learning different things. And so it's important for me personally to not just like, you know, sit on that. Because I did that for a long time. I just, you know, was like always learning things, taking in information and like not necessarily creating anything with it. Or sometimes I would, but it would be private. You know, I wasn't one to like share outwardly anything having to do with what I was learning. Because I just didn't necessarily feel so compelled to. I mean, I did a little bit in some of my personal relationships. I have, certain friends who also like to read a lot or study different things. And so we would kind of like go back and forth on some of those things. But beyond that, I wasn't so focused at that time on this. So, but during our return since then, we have been. But there's, a kind of balance, I would say, with it, right? Between Rahu and Ketu, like they can be associated with the head and tail of a dragon, right? And if we would shift ourselves a little too far into like our north node, into the head of the dragon, right? I think that we don't necessarily want that either. And for us personally too, right? Like that's a lot of fire. And and we have to be careful with our fire energy. Even though we have a lot of water, air, and earth in our chart that helps balance this out, I think because of how much fire is in this particular part of our chart, it's like, we're just a little like wary and careful about it. Yeah, like we're not trying to eat everyone alive and destroy the planet. Although there have been times where we felt like that. Yes, there have been times that we have felt and envisioned things like that. Which could be, a little more attached to some of our shadow, but it's just like, we're like, oh, gotta be careful with that. That's some strong fire. So, yes, temper. That temperance being the major arcana for Sagittarius, it's like, we've been looking at that too, like, how can I temper this energy and not destroy everything? So, and instead build and create something wonderful out of it, right? And it can be passionate and it can be grandiose and it can be fiery and all these things, but hopefully ultimately without like too much destruction. A little destruction's okay, right? Like when we're talking about needing new beginnings in our life, which is part of what the new moon symbolizes, right? There sometimes needs to be that breaking down of old structures and falling away. And as a Plutonic individual, once again, like we're very familiar with the death rebirth cycle and like destroying things to build them back up again, tower after tower. Like we're very familiar with that energy. But again, just because we're familiar with it and we have a lot of experience with it doesn't mean we need to necessarily let that energy go so like unchecked. Yes, so just that's that. A little bit of North Node talk, I guess you could say. Yeah. Okay, let me just we're gonna breeze over here again. We're about to, I mentioned before, do some things in regards to the winter solstice here this weekend and into the new year. We have some things we're working on for that this weekend. And then, again, Capricorn season. We're about to head into that. We're in the late degrees of Sag, right? And so we've done a pretty good job at riding this season out and riding it out with a bang, I guess you could say. A fiery bang. So yeah, into Capricorn. And this is where the devil comes into the major arcana. And this will be an interesting one, right? Because of all the things that the devil is associated with. And it's gonna be an interesting one. Not only like the upcoming video we're making on that and its relation to these different symbols like Dracula and all that, but also just like the month in general ahead. This is a peculiar time, right? And we have Christmas next week, right, which is associated with the birth of Christ, right? And then in the spring, the death and ascension of Christ in however many months that is after this too. So this all plays a significant role in this devil energy too, and what we're going to talk about and bring into the world in regards to it, and into the future. So yes, it's very excited. All right, yeah, that's that. I think that's it. Yeah, okay. I've looked everything over. Have a good weekend. Happy winter solstice. Happy New Year. I love you. Happy new moon. That's all. All right. Bye-bye.